All right, so let's get into this discussion now. The festive season is a time for joy and celebration, but for many South Africans, it's also becoming a season of scams. Social media is flooded with complaints from people falling victim to online fraud and other scams. Today, we uncover the most common scams targeting consumers, how they operate, and most importantly, how you can protect yourself. Joining us for this conversation is Nazia Karrim, a fraud prevention specialist. A very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for your time. You know, it is incredible that more and more people still fall prey to scammers, and very unfortunate. So as we put a focus on how some of these scams operate, perhaps let's start with what are some of the most common online scams targeting South Africans, especially during the festive season?
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. So the holiday season is a time when we tend to be a little bit more trusting and relaxed, and we are prioritizing convenience and comfort over our safety and our security. And this change in behavior is one of the opportunities that scammers actually maximize during this time. So consumers will be looking to take advantage of the year-end specials and the New Year specials that will be coming around during this period. And the scammers use this opportunity to promote their online shopping and holiday scams through false advertising, fake online shopping websites, and phishing sites. In particular, advanced fee scams such as online shopping scams and delivery scams, they reflect a significantly higher volume during this period. People are paying deposits for accommodation or travel or buying gifts for their families and their friends, and they usually find out that they have fallen victim to these scams or discount offers that were provided. Other types of scams during this period include things like donation scams or romance scams. And now, as we're drawing closer to January, we are definitely going to see the back to school scams coming in.
And I mean, I know you touched a little bit about, how they typically carry out these scams, but what tactics do they use to deceive victims? I'm talking about particularly victims that are aware that these scams exist. You'll find that even, your most sophisticated online user gets scammed.
Yes, it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't have a preference to whether you are educated or uneducated. I myself may be susceptible to a scam as well. So what we do find is that many find their personal and payment information have been phished, and in some cases their devices are even compromised. And this is as a result of them clicking on malicious links in messages or by visiting fake online web shopping sites. For example, consumers may have made legitimate purchases over this period, and they're obviously waiting delivery of these items. And the scammers then send their messages impersonating these delivery companies. And these emails or SMSs contain these links to these malicious sites. And when the consumer clicks on the link, they fall victim to that phishing. In some cases, the malware is also installed on their devices. Another tactic that's involved, it involves creating panic or instilling fear in you. Now that you've relaxed and your mind is out of work mode, and you may not actually be at home or be able to manage an emergency as effectively as you would if you were at home, the scammers use this as an opportunity as well. They do this by impersonating, for example, fraud departments of trusted institutions, your financial institutions, your mobile service providers, and they pose as employees from these companies, claiming that there's been some form of suspicious activity or fraud that's taken place on your account. And to prevent further losses, they ask you to actually disclose your PINs, your OTPs, your passwords, or to even click on links that they may have sent you in a message or an email to help process the application. And then in that moment, when you do, in that panic state, you'll eventually find that you've got yourself compromised. So they use many of these types of tactics to actually create a sense of urgency and to get you to act without thinking on instant.
And those tactics that you mentioned, are red flags, wouldn't you say? Because already you know that your bank wouldn't ask you certain things, SARS wouldn't ask you certain things, but we do fall prey. I want to go back to an earlier comment that you made about romance scams. I mean, some of these scams, you'll find that, somebody is scammed a year into the relationship. How do these work, and what are the red flags there?
Well, I think one of the things that makes romance scams so sad during this period or so terrible is the fact that this is a time when you spend with your family and your friends over the holiday and you're looking for that company. And if a person is found in a situation where they don't have the support system or the support structure around them, the scammers will abuse this weakness and actually impersonate someone who's going to be that person that's going to be that special someone in your life, taking advantage of that loneliness, pretending to be that support structure. And the moment the person falls for it, they then start the next stage of the actual scam, where it either becomes something that they may need help to sort out, they may need money to buy presents or buy school fees or pay for things in the coming year. And you, being the loving person that you are, the caring person that you are, may actually give this over to that scammer. So these are the types of weaknesses that are actually abused during that process. And it's also quite often the platforms that are used are online platforms. So it's online dating sites. You meet someone you've never met before online, and you build this relationship with them. And that's how romance scams are actually taking place during this period.
Why are banks so reluctant to help you in a scam like this? And on the other hand, law enforcement authorities like the police, there's very little they can do. Why is it so difficult to catch these scammers?
I think the first problem is the fact that a scam is usually has an invisible perpetrator. Yeah. You can never 100% identify this particular perpetrator. If you are, for example, in that online dating situation, the photograph they could have put up on that profile could be anybody. It could even be a deep fake or computer-generated image. And that could have been the profile picture that you've associated with. It can go right down to creating deep fake real-time videos. I could be standing here and talking to you and you seeing Nazia's face, but it's not actually her. So it's very difficult to prove that, in fact, that was a scam. Unfortunately, you do get legitimate people who also look to take advantages of the goodwill of these institutions. So we have to actually prove that, in fact, this did take place, that you did not actually give the money willingly out of the good of your heart and eventually land up coming back to claim the loss later on. So it is difficult. It also requires the consumers to come forward or the victims to come forward and report the incidents. Yeah. Many victims feel ashamed or embarrassed, and they don't come forward to actually report the incidents. And that information is what builds the intelligence to catch the perpetrator. And the more intelligence we can actually gather, the likelihood of actually finding the perpetrator is then becoming a greater opportunity to do so. But at this point in time, a single report likely standing alone is very unlikely to find the perpetrator and have him apprehended.
Sure, Nadia, there's so much, Nazia, there's so much we can actually go through in terms of just the varying scams and also how people can protect themselves. But let's leave it there for now. And perhaps the best advice is, when it's too good to be true, it normally is. And you need to be very careful, particularly during this time of the year, as well as those that are, surrounding themselves with stockpiles. Be careful during this time of the year. All right, that was Nazia Karrim, a fraud prevention specialist, just giving us some tips there around that.